So, Renato, can Trump and Musk be stopped before they break the entire government?
Eh, it's complicated. I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a skeet. So, Asha, it is amazing what is happening right now. Thousands and thousands of FBI agents are worried that they're not going to have a job tomorrow. They have been sent questionnaires asking them to provide details of everything they did related to January 6th investigations. The leadership at the FBI is trying to stand up to the administration to try to save their jobs. It is the cleansing that Kash Patel and others have talked about for quite some time.
Yes, and also told Congress was, or told the Senate was not going to happen during his
Mhm.
confirmation hearing. Yeah, so this is Emil Bove, is that right? The
Is it Bove?
Bove acting, I don't know. Is he act he's the deputy, I'm sorry, he's the deputy attorney general.
I think he's, yeah, something like that. He's just Deputy Associate Attorney General, but he's the highest non-Senate confirmed position you can have in the Department of Justice. And Trump, truthed out before he, while the transition was still going, before he was inaugurated, that he was specifically going to appoint him to that position precisely so he could take immediate control of the Justice Department. And boy, is he taking control. Trump has also appointed an interim U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia who is investigating his own federal prosecutors and running amok there as well. And we're starting to see, I actually think, sort of an internal implosion of the DOJ and the FBI due to the actions of the Trump administration.
Yeah, so Bove has he issued a directive to the acting director of the FBI, Brian Driscoll, who apparently goes by the Driz, to provide a list of every agent who had worked in any way on cases relating to January 6th. Now, let's remember that the January 6th investigation, as far as I'm aware, is the largest investigation in the history of the Justice Department. These are over 1,500 people who were charged, at least as of when Trump became president, because he pardoned them all. And we know that he's let them all free.
Yeah.
And in a case like that, where you had people come from across the country to this rally at the Ellipse, which ended up with this mob attack at the Capitol, even a case that is run out of Washington, D.C., either at FBI headquarters, through the special counsel's office, it's going to involve leads to all 56 field offices, because the way the FBI works is when you open a case, if you need some information, so, if I'm working in New York and there is someone in San Francisco who has information related to my case, I would send a lead to the San Francisco field office and I would say, hey, this is the person that I need interviewed. Here's what I'm trying to find out. And what the San Francisco field office does is they assign that lead to an agent in that office who works in the same area, like in my case, counterintelligence. That agent goes out, does the interview, writes it up, and then that gets sent back to me as a part of my case file and I can review what happens. Now, in that kind of system, in a sprawling case like the January 6th investigation, which involves so many people, that's necessarily going to involve all 56 field offices, thousands of agents. And I think the estimate is that there are probably 6,000 agents that had something to do with January 6th, including obviously heads of field offices and heads and supervisors of squads in those field offices, assigning those leads and managing pieces of those cases. So that's 42%, by the way, of the agent workforce. And to his credit, and I think really for the first time that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, the Driz said, no, I'm not
Mhm.
doing that, because it was very clear that they wanted this list in order to summarily fire all these people. And there are internal rules that lay out criteria for dismissing an agent, and it has to be based on wrongdoing. It has to be based on, you broke the law, or you evinced some major misconduct of some kind. And simply working on a case that a incoming Department of Justice didn't like doesn't meet that standard.
Yeah. So first of all, public employees are entitled to due process before they're deprived of their jobs. And there, as you mentioned, there is a procedure there. And really, what Trump was essentially suggesting was, and Trump's lackeys, is that they were going to be firing these people without following the process that's there or giving them any process at all and naming these people publicly. So they would be potentially subject to all the people who had been pardoned in the last upcoming weeks. And just to be clear, I mean, it's been very heartbreaking to see because for some of these agents, some of them are weeks, months away from retirement. For some of them, this is their only employment has been throughout their career. And so they are essentially being exposed for engaging in public service and doing their job. And whatever, even if it was really, sad is the lack of courage on the right, because even no matter how much of a MAGA person you are, you have to understand that these FBI agents are just public servants who are doing their jobs. Just shameful display.
And there's no evidence that these investigations were not lawfully predicated. I think, they were almost universally successfully prosecuted. I mean, if there was any kind of misconduct or, unlawfulness about them, it would have been, handled in the judicial system, I would think. But yeah, this is, the lack of people standing up. So, to that point, Renato, I will say that the FBI Agents Association and the Society of Former Agents of the FBI, again, these are not like hippie, commie organizations. The FBI Agents Association represents agents. They represent the best interests of the agents in a variety of different contexts. The Society of Former FBI Agents is there to as sort of a, you know, um, almost like the alumni of the FBI that are there to kind of look at, weigh in sometimes on policy issues. And both of them are outraged with
Mhm.
this, mass targeting.
Absolutely. And, there have been already lawyers who've been writing letters, for example, to the administration warning them that if they do what they plan to do, there will be lawsuits. And there's been a lot of talk, potentially, there's going to be lawsuits filed to try to get, let's say, a TRO to stop this activity. So, I think by the time this podcast is listened to and viewed, I wouldn't be surprised if there are lawsuits out there. And it'll really be a first test for the Trump administration. I mean, it's interesting, Asha. Trump has really put himself and his administration out there for this January 6th nonsense. And he's done it in a very ham-handed way. If you are really skillful and evil, you can find a much more effective way to carry out a sort of change of the guard at the FBI. And this is very ham-handed. And this will be, I think, one of the first tests in whether or not resistance to a takeover and subversion of our government is going to incite some sort of actual popular resistance and some pushback in his own party.
Yeah, I think that there, are some lessons that hopefully can be taken from this. So, as I mentioned before, Brian Driscoll pushed back. He not only pushed back, he sent an email to the entire FBI workforce. It was very carefully worded. It wasn't defiant, but it was very clear that he did not intend to comply with this request because he did not feel that it followed the proper procedures and policies that the FBI has. Since then, I think it's been really amazing to see that the heads of different field offices have also joined, telling their respective agents, the agents in their respective offices, that not to fill out these questionnaires, or to basically delay filling out these questionnaires, and really that they're going to take the hit for that. Like, in other words, they're going to submit these things that, as collectively as leadership. So, in other words, there is a lot of, I think, leadership stepping up and reassuring the people who are just doing their jobs, on the line. Not people aren't just being left out to dry. And I think hopefully getting reassurance. I think that, if there are legal measures coming, that means that they have representation, and that's really good. But, I hope that that will, dissuade some agents from throwing in the towel and leaving. I think it's really important that, if at all possible, they stay, because you don't want this kind of organization to get hollowed out. But I hope that also it provides some inspiration and maybe some hope for other people who are also, being targeted for dismissal across the government.
You've talked in the past, Sasha, in some of our prior episodes about friction and creating friction, and that's really what the Driz did here. It's what those attorneys are potentially going to do if they end up going through with their threats of filing lawsuits. And I think, the question is going to be, at what point does some of that friction move the needle and impose some sort of counterweight to the Trump administration? I'm actually at a conference now. I've talked to some Republican staffers in the House, and it's been interesting. A lot of them privately are like, well, we got to say the sky is green for 4 years, and they're putting their, hands over their ears and trying to make it through, hoping that we're going to make it through. And, I think at a certain point, it'll be interesting to see whether, if there's enough of a popular outcry, there could be some backlash here. There could be some tension within the Republican Party, because remember, they only have like a two-seat majority in the House. It might be one soon. So they're really operating at a razor's edge there. A lot of those people have to be concerned about keeping their seats. And I just wonder, will we have a point at which people are like, we don't want thousands of FBI agents to quit, because what if we have a terrorist attack in the United States, or some other emergency in which we desperately need federal law enforcement to be strong?
I think that's an excellent point. So 6,000 agents, as I mentioned, is 42% of the, current agent workforce. And those are agents that are, I imagine, with this size case, not only agents who are working criminal cases, these are agents who are, normally doing not just criminal, but also cyber and terrorism and maybe even counterintelligence. So what you're doing is, if you were to fire all those people at one time, you're leaving a huge vacuum. You're leaving like cases abandoned mid investigation. Everything from Medicare fraud to human trafficking to, cyber attacks to China and Russia, and terrorism threats. I mean, it's such a short-sighted thing, and all of the expertise, by the way, that you lose when you get rid of someone, because you do build up that expertise. And by the way, it's not really easy to onboard a new agent, at least in the current process. I mean, it takes 12 to 18 months to get an agent, just from the point of application through all the background checks to Quantico and then to the assignment. So it would be setting the entire agency backwards. And here's my fear, Renato, is that when you create that much of a vacuum, and then if you do want to then fill it, a new director does not have to go through that onerous vetting process. that the FBI currently has. That's internal. I mean, Kash Patel could really order whoever he wants to, he could say, like, hey, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, show up. Here's your badge and gun. And there you are. And you have then completely changed the fundamental nature of the nation's law enforcement system.
Yeah, that is, I think, what's at stake. I mean, I think you've done a great job, Asha, of talking about what's at stake here, right? Because ultimately, the FBI is operating with that badge and that gun and so forth, connotes with it and carries with it the force of, the ability to, act on behalf of the United States government and conduct arrests and so forth. And if it's abused or misused, suddenly what federal law enforcement is changes forever. And, it's interesting. I'd say, Trump has made a lot of promises about what he's going to accomplish. And it's really going to be hard to prosecute a lot of migrants or whatever the heck he wants to do, or people in sanctuary cities, if he fires half of the federal law enforcement, right? And so it's shooting himself in many ways in the foot. But I will say, Trump is incompetent, and that hope candidly offers some hope to our republic.
I hope so. I do think, though, that it would temporarily stymie his efforts. But like I said, if he were to refill those slots very quickly with loyalists, he may very well have, kind of this paramilitary arm that he has wanted, that actually have the force of the state that he didn't have on January 6th, to do his bidding, but he will have it. And our colleague Ruth Ben-Ghiat has, she writes about how authoritarians basically hollow out institutions and transform them into extensions of the dictator. And I think that is frankly what you would see happen.
Well, Trump is, for some of what he's trying to do is, operate in fits and starts, right? We see these tariffs that have suddenly gone on hiatus, or at least for now, for a short period of time. Maybe that was all for show. But I think he is demonstrating through his actions right away, both in the FBI and in parts of the Justice Department, particularly in the District of Columbia, that he's serious about hollowing out those institutions. And so, one thing I will say is the legal fight that is going to occur is not one that can ultimately be a winning battle, in my opinion. It's going to take the public, it's going to take people who are lawmakers to step up and use that as a rallying cry. It's like the Alamo, where it was a losing battle for the Texans, but it became a symbol. And it is my hope that these FBI agents will be a symbol for the rest of the country to resist.
So what are you saying? Are you saying that he would ultimately prevail, that these lawsuits will slow it down, but that eventually he would be able to find a way to dismiss them?
I think really
In other
smart
words, like the real solution here is that he's got to back down. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, what I'm suggesting is that a smart person could find a way to accomplish this. The
Mm-hmm.
way they're accomplishing it is bad, and
Yeah.
they're not even doing a good job at accomplishing what they want to do. And these lawsuits are going to slow that down and create a lot of problems. But in the end of the day, if Trump is dedicated to firing lots of federal employees, he can find ways to do so. And ultimately, the what this does is it creates friction, to use the Asha Rangappa term, but also it's a symbol. It is creating sort of a flashpoint for the rest of the country to wake up and see that something serious is happening here and that they need to step up and take action.
Yeah. And I think as you're saying that, I can totally see what you mean, because, the FBI is a very rigid organization. It's got a lot of rules, and, it's, I think agents dot their I's and cross their T's. But if you were to try to go after people, you could very easily probably find small infractions that run afoul of, the internal rules and regulations, and that, could send them down the path of having some cause to dismiss them. In other words, I think what you're trying to say is you could find a way to do it if you were really dedicated to identifying all these people and going after them. I still think even in that kind of process, it would take a long time, but I see your point.
Yeah, and I mean there are other ways that you can effectively accomplish the same thing. But the bottom, I don't want to give anyone any ideas, but
Yeah,
the point being is that ultimately, what has been happening right now is the Republicans, as I said, are hoping that they can sort of placate Trump and kind of mitigate any damage he causes, and the Democrats are in disarray. They're disagreeing with each other. They're not unified, and they've just been defeated. And so no one is here to stand up against Trump. And really, we need something to
yeah,
crystallize opposition. And so that's what I think the value of a lawsuit is. That's what I think the value of FBI agents who will be speaking up. I mean, right
yeah,
now they're not, but with good reason. But if they're all fired en masse, I'm sure they will.
yeah. Well, let's keep the attention on it. I think for all of these things, the challenges are so much happening at once. And I think we've gotten so used to the spectacle that Trump brings with him, and it's just always something, and there's crazy stuff happening, and he's, threatening to invade countries or whatever. It's really hard for the public, I think, to keep their eyes on what's important. And so this is definitely one of them, and people should be paying attention. And I think the lawsuits will help.
And by the way, that is the reason for you to pay attention. A lot of people want to put their hands over their ears and their eyes at this point, and just not look at this this car crash, so to speak, or train derailment. But Trump is doing a lot of crazy things in part to distract us from what he is doing behind the scenes. And this is the sort of thing that is massive and could change an important American institution forever. And so this is something that's worth paying attention to. So, Asha, considering other things that we need to be paying attention to, there's something happening at the Treasury that I know you in particular are very focused on.
Yeah, I've kind of been obsessed with this since last week because it is so bonkers. Like it has just been crazy to me what is happening. So basically, Musk and four very young kids, I mean, they're like 19 to 23. They're like, interns or people that work with him at one of his other companies, have basically taken over the Treasury Department. I can't remember exactly what day this happened last week, but they approached the acting secretary of the Treasury, David LeBrick, and demanded to have access to the sensitive payments system of the US Treasury. Now, the sensitive payments system is basically the part of the Treasury that pays all of the government's bills. it's constantly doing outflows. It is apparently a very close hold system, with where only few people have access to kind of the tech, the mechanics, the operational parts of how it all works, because it is imperative that that whole system operate in a completely nonpartisan manner, because we have to pay our bills. We have to pay people. We have to send out social security checks. We have to send out tax refunds, all of this stuff. Well, for refusing to give them access, he was placed on administrative leave. And by the end of the week, Musk and his minions got access. And then over the weekend, it was very unclear exactly what they were doing. Because, by the way, the system also gives access to people's personal information. In other words, if you have, if you're getting Social Security benefits, all of your information is in that system because it's got to match up, who it's sending this stuff to. And I just want to, there's this, it's the specific department of the Treasury. It's called the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. And so I was doing some research, talking to some people over the weekend who have worked at Treasury, trying to understand, what possible legitimate reason could there be to be here? Because, we know what Musk's claim is that he says that he is just slashing expenses, right? He's cutting fraud. Well, what these people tell me is, this is not the place that you would be doing that. The Bureau of the Fiscal Service is basically the accounts payable department of the Treasury Department. In other words, this department doesn't decide whether you get the Social Security check or whether you get your tax refund. The IRS will determine whether you get a tax refund, and then they will send a request to this Department of the Treasury to send the payment. Similar to Health and Human Services, similar to, Department of Defense, when they have to pay a vendor, they contract with the vendor and then they will send, the invoice or the payment request to this department. What this means is if you are trying to actually find expenses to slash, then what you would be doing is going to the individual agencies and looking at the requests that they're generating and saying, okay, you can't be requesting these anymore. Like, this is wasteful or whatever. You wouldn't be going to the back end, the payments piece, and trying to do something there. And specifically, what it sounds like he's trying to do is basically get a hold of the payment system in order to stop these payments. So to put like a stop payment on the stuff. And from what I understand, if he were to do that, this could be catastrophic to our economy.
Yeah, I have to say, Asha, I have struggled to understand what he's trying to accomplish here, other than he's trying to find the most efficient way to gain control over our nation's ability to pay its bills in order to essentially tell agencies you have to do what I want you to do, because no matter what you claim that laws, they may tell him, well, a law has like there's been a congressional appropriation, we have to spend this money because that is what the law is, that was signed into law by the president, passed by both houses of Congress. This is his way of saying, like, well, screw you, I have control of our purse, essentially, and I will stop that from occurring. This to me, I mean, I will just say, Asha, this was the first time when I saw that I was genuinely concerned that Trump and Musk, essentially, and I'd say them together because I really think Musk is empowered by Trump. Trump could just, you know, cut him loose at any point, but they could potentially break our country, break our economy, break our government, and that's really serious. That's the sort of thing that all of the rich people who back the Republican Party would not like if that happened.
Yeah, and I think that is the kind of control that he has if he indeed has gotten operational control of this payment system. So it sounds like what they have been putting out is that he only has read-only access. But apparently the only reason to have read-only access is to be able to look at the code. Like basically look at the payment system's code. And the only reason that you want to look at the code is if you have some intention of changing it. Bookmark that for a second. As I mentioned before, what the payment system is doing is basically paying out, requests for requests to pay from different agencies and stuff. So in other words, the transaction has already occurred. The expense has already been incurred. At this point, it's just a debt. It's an obligation. And also, this is what pays out I guess the interest on treasury bonds, which are supposed to be like the safest investment. So, once you stop paying things, it's like, you're getting a bunch of bills and you disable the auto pay on your bank website. Like, you still owe the bills. Okay, the fact that your bank isn't paying them doesn't make them go away. And this could, I think, depending on the kinds of things that aren't paid, could really send, from what I understand, it could completely crash the economy, apparently, which is really troubling. So then the question is, like, what is the end game here? I mean, I personally cannot believe that this is just about cutting expenses and whatever, balancing the budget in 3 days or whatever he claims that he's doing. And there have been a lot of really disturbing things, because he's been posting, by the way, screenshots of stuff that they're encountering in the system, like on X. In another one, he's saying that somebody said, this is so much fraud and waste, the treasury needs to be on the blockchain. And he's like, it will be. So, it's like, what does that mean? What's happening? Is he gonna, like, I don't know, like, buy crypto? I don't know what he's gonna do. I do have one theory, though. So I think the best case scenario, I'm reading a book called Breaking Twitter. This is my book club selection for my Substack. And it basically chronicles, his whole takeover of Twitter. And there's very much a playbook that's kind of he's following here. He was also fixated during the Twitter thing on in the Twitter takeover on its payment system. So maybe he's just kind of crashing, breaking things and crashing and burning, and that's kind of bad enough. Okay, like, maybe he's just crashing our economy. All right, not great. One thing that I started to piece together, though, and it's got me wondering, is he's lost a lot of money on X. He's made some really, really poor decisions. He's made the site toxic for advertisers. They boycotted, the site. He's suing them to try to get them back on. But, he's lost about 40% of the ad revenue that he had on a site that relied for its revenue 90% on advertising. One thing that he has, since taking over Twitter, he has shaped into a business model is one you probably already know. You'll remember the whole subscription service that was really failed, like trying to do the Twitter Blue that he tried to force everybody to get. And that was a big fail. But his other thing that he has had on his mind is making X into an everything app.
Mm-hmm.
An app where you call your transportation and you order your food and and importantly, you transfer money. Okay. And he compared it to China's WeChat, which basically is the everything app in China. And that's how they surveil and follow you. Okay. So the whole data piece kind of fits in there, but also one obstacle that he's had to creating this whole payment system on X is that apparently that requires a lot of different licensing from each state. It takes a while to do that. Just last week, however, he's entered into a deal with Visa, which will allow him to use Visa's network to do a peer-to-peer payment network. So he's open for business. He calls it X Money. Okay. And, this is just my speculation. I just feel like he's got designs on our payment system.
It seems, I don't know what to make of it. It's like the underpants gnomes from South Park, where it's like they steal the underpants and there's a bunch of question marks.
Step 1, yeah. Step 1,
steal underpants. Step 2, there's question mark.
Step 3, profit.
Yeah,
Totally.
I don't know. Yeah.
Totally. What is step 2?
I don't know. I don't really understand how like mucking up with our treasury gets you anywhere. I mean, if he's got Visa, he doesn't need the treasury to transfer
Well,
money
he needs
around.
customers. He needs customers. That's the problem. So, I mean, who's going to use his dumb X money? Would you use it?
No, but I wouldn't
No.
use it.
But
But I
what if that was the only way you were going to get your tax refund? Or what if that
okay.
was the only way your mom was going to get her social security check?
Okay.
Or what if that was the only way that, Lockheed Martin is going to get paid for their payments? Oh, by the way, he gets to see all of the details of different vendor payments for his competitors. PS. I'll just add that in there because that's, I don't know, conflict of interest. I know we don't care about that anymore, but it's just so problematic on so many different levels.
Mhm.
But then there's also this whole, he's going to put the treasury on the blockchain. So I
He
feel
says a lot of BS. I mean, he said so much stuff on Twitter that was just full of crap. I don't know what to make of that. I think though, I guess my concerns when I think about it, one is that he just may around and like screw things up. And as you rightfully point out, that could just destroy the United States economy. I mean, a big part of why the United States is so central to the world's economy is that we know how to do stuff, and you can rely on the United States government to do things and like to pay interest on T-bills and so forth. And so if he screws that up, that just could have a devastating impact in the economy. But I'm also concerned about the security risks here. I mean, we now have a bunch of randos who know all sorts of secrets about our payment system. I mean, if you are a foreign adversary, they're great targets. And these are not, carefully vetted people. These are some folks who work for one of his companies. Maybe they're the people he pays to play his gaming accounts, where he, brags that he's an expert gamer, but really he doesn't know how to actually play the games or whatever it is. I mean, I think he's somebody who's kind of full of crap in a lot of ways, but nonetheless, having somebody like that running around in sensitive areas of our government is very much a concern.
Yeah, I think you're good. I think you are more naive than I would be in
Okay,
this
I don't
situation.
know.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just trying to think about somebody in his position. He's a billionaire. He's got other companies to run. He's just going to come. Okay, he's going to come into the government and just, I don't know, just in his free time, come help us, slash expenses and balance the budget without some benefit to him. It doesn't really add up. On top of that, of all the places to go, he zeroes in on this one obscure department. I mean, have you ever even heard of this? Like, did you know this much
No.
about Treasury? Nobody thinks about this. I don't even think the people at Treasury think about it. I talked to some very senior people at Treasury. They were like, yeah, like, this is what I know about what's going on there, but I don't really think about it that much because it just happens. That is one of those mission critical offices that has to do what it does, and nobody ever thinks, like, it's not ever on the chopping block. It's not like really something that people are debating because it has to happen. And yet he zeroed in on it, and they made a beeline for that place. That is hinky. That is
For
super
sure.
hinky. That
It
is not
is.
just Musk being crazy Musk, just running around. He's not just running around the Treasury Department. He is there and he's looking at the source code for the payment system of the US Treasury.
I mean, you don't have to convince me that Musk is bizarre and usually deeply problematic motives. I think I just question his competence. I mean, you use Twitter as an example. I mean, he spent $44 billion on Twitter and he proceeded to run it into the ground. I mean, he ruined the things about it that
Mm-hmm.
made sense. I mean, he had a platform, he purchased a platform in which people like LeBron James and Taylor Swift would create content for free. Like, do you know how much money it would ordinarily cost to get like Taylor Swift or LeBron James to like contribute to your publication? So he essentially had this golden egg, so to speak, there. Goose was laying golden eggs, and he proceeded to ruin it. for not so good reasons, and he had all sorts of silly ideas. So, I mean, I understand he has an idea in his head of creating some super app. Maybe he has an idea he's gonna remake the government. I I think he may, there's a chance he's just gonna screw everything up, and Trump's gonna cut him loose. I don't know. I mean,
Mm-mm,
we'll see. You don't think so? Too rich,
mm-mm.
too
No,
helpful to Trump, huh?
no. Trump is behaving towards Elon Musk the way that he behaved towards Vladimir Putin in his first term. He's afraid. He's afraid of Musk. I don't know what leverage. I don't understand really what is happening there, but I mean, you can just hear it in the things that he's parroting, which I don't think he has any idea what he's saying. He's talking about things like we just need to privatize everything. This is, by the way, the Curtis Yarvin philosophy that everything needs to be privatized and the government just needs to be run by a dictator CEO. And then, like, all these, I guess, private companies and tech companies provide services to everyone. Like, we can do a whole rabbit hole down that philosophy, which, by the way, JD Vance adheres to. In another thing, but like Trump is saying this stuff. Trump is now talking about, withholding aid from South Africa. Like, since when does Trump think about South Africa? He does not. So Musk is in his ear. He's afraid of Musk, or he's not going to stop Musk. He's not going to cut him loose. I know people have been talking about that. And Musk has some idea, and it is not something that is, in my opinion, in the best interests of the United States, or the people that the government serves.
You don't have to convince me that Musk is not acting in the public interest. And you're right that Trump's beholden to him, not just for $250 million that he contributed, but also essentially gerrymandering or jimmying up this X platform to spread propaganda for Trump. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when he really Musk screws things up. I mean, I think one thing is I have a higher belief in the incompetence of both of these people. So I think that if many ways, to me, Trump is more like Mussolini. Okay, if you're looking at, problematic leaders of the past, somebody who got himself involved in a lot of wars he couldn't win, somebody who is sort of was, ended up losing control of his own country to his own countrymen. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I just, I really, from what everything I'm seeing from Elon Musk has been a lot of incompetence, and I guess it remains to be seen if there's something effective that's going to really undo our government. If he is the efficient creator of our undoing, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, just to get back to the legal piece here, there is a lawsuit that's been filed by Crew against the Secretary of the Treasury, the Department of the Treasury, and the Bureau of Fiscal Services, which you now know exists and what it does. Basically alleging, or asking for an injunction because of the ongoing privacy violations that are happening, for everybody's data. So we'll see what happens. I think there is, as I'm sure we'll be coming back to this topic, because I think one of the hard things here is this is so extraordinary what's happening, that it's not really clear how you stop it, because it's not really clear in what capacity Musk is actually operating. From what I
Mhm.
understand, he was made into a special government employee today. I don't know what he was before
Mhm.
that. So I guess before that he was just rando
A
private
dude,
citizen, like,
some dude.
like looking at the code of the U.S. Treasury payment system. I think that that's going to be the challenge here. Even talking with people like Ruth Ben-Ghiat, she's like, I don't even know what to call this, because this is like a whole X factor, if you will, in kind of the traditional autocratic playbook. He's sort of come out of nowhere, and become, in many ways, the de facto president, kind of wielding the power, with Trump as sort of this, figurehead, power, relatively kind of, just kind of talking and kind of rallying the base, but it does not seem to me that he is the one really in charge.
Well, I'm eager to read, and everyone should check out Asha's Substack because I know you wrote a post essentially laying out this argument. So I'm going to check that out. And I guess it remains to be seen in the weeks ahead exactly who the real authoritarian is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that really wants to say I told you so, but I'm really hoping I don't have to because it would be bad.
So, Asha, before we go, this is a really exciting time for sports. And we just had the most shocking NBA trade of all time happen this weekend. The Super Bowl is coming up. Are you paying attention to any of this?
No. What was the NBA trade?
Well, Luka Doncic, who is sort of a rising star of the NBA, 25-year-old guy, led his team, the Dallas Mavericks, to the NBA Finals last year,
Okay,
was
so
traded without any warning to the Lakers. No other team was consulted for pennies on the dollar.
so I was just in Dallas visiting my sister. That's where I came
Okay.
back from today. And my sister was talking about this. So this does sound
Okay.
familiar. I was very
Oh,
shocked,
great.
but she exclaimed, "Oh my god, whatever was, they traded." And I've never known her to be into sports. So I was like, "What are you even talking about? And since when are you into this?" But I guess she lives in Dallas and she's like, the Dallas Mavericks, is it Mavericks?
Yes.
Okay.
It's kind of a big deal,
Yeah,
Asha.
yeah. So she was like, "So, I follow them." So I did hear about that, is my point.
Okay.
I'm not
Did you
that
hear
out
did
of
you
it.
hear about the Super Bowl? Do you know that that's going
I
to
mean, I
happen?
know that it's a
It's
game.
a thing. It's a thing. Do you know like which teams are playing in the Super Bowl even? Oh my God, Asha. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. I do think you, at least for the I expected you to tell
The
me
Chiefs? Is it the Chiefs?
the Chiefs are involved. That's a good guess because
Okay.
they're in it. It
I
seems like
feel
they're in the
like I
Super Bowl
feel
every
like
year.
sometime in the last few weeks there was something about the Chiefs. So okay.
They're in the
Okay.
Super Bowl every
Okay.
year, it
See?
seems.
Okay,
There you go.
that's so far I had heard about the Mavericks trade and I knew that the Chiefs were playing. I mean, I hadn't really
Okay.
thought about it, but
Yes, you
that would be my
assumed.
first guess. Yes.
Okay.
Who are
Do you
they
watch
playing?
do you not know?
No.
The Eagles.
I should have guessed. I might have said that. I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
it's a
But then I
rematch actually
but
from
then I was
prior
afraid that
year.
that I the Eagles were kind of like in my consciousness, but then I was like, but what if that's not football? And then I feel stupid.
Oh, you're not sure what the Eagles are a football team? Do you watch the commercials at the Super Bowl? Like that's what like a lot of people who are not into sports do. Like they watch the Super Bowl just to like, have chicken wings and nachos and watch the commercials.
No, because I feel like on social media the good ones get put up there so I can eventually see them.
You're like these people who are like, I don't follow politics. I just watch like in TikTok, there'll be like little clips of the politicians, and that's how I decide.
I think I am I am to sports what the completely disengaged person this I am to sports what the civically disengaged person is to politics.
Wow.
That's me. I'm not
Uh,
totally like, I mean, I have sort
mm,
of heard of stuff. I just don't know how it all fits together.
I'm sorry if you're listening to this. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm not anti. I would have a Super Bowl party.
Okay. Would you watch the Super Bowl at the party, or would it just be a party in honor of the Super Bowl?
It would mainly be a party in honor of the Super Bowl, and I would be very into like what I was like the appetizers and things that I was making.
Okay.
But I would sit and watch
Okay. Yeah.
for a
I
little bit.
mean, it's sort of a big thing. I think it's the last thing left that everyone in the country watches, right? It's not like, it used to be like MASH would be ending or be the last episode of Seinfeld and everyone would watch it.
Yeah.
Now it is the Super Bowl, and that's kind of it.
Okay. Then maybe I should join in.
Okay. I'm going to check in with you in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if that's actually occurred.
Okay.